Sri Lanka today in the morning. Explosions have hit 3 churches and 3 hotels in and around the Sri Lankan capital of Colombo, killing at least 25 people. Several foreigners are also feared to be dead in these attacks. The blasts have hit several high-end hotels and 1 church in the capital, while 2 additional churches were targeted outside Colombo. The police has confirmed these explosions. There were initial reports of at least 300 people being admitted to hospitals in Colombo. An eyewitness account by a Sri Lankan Member of Parliament, Harsha De Silva, who was at St. Anthony's Church in Colombo at the time of explosion, described the horrible scenes at the church. According to the legislator, he saw many body parts strewn all over. Several people were rushed to the hospital soon after the blasts. And he has a breakup of all the blasts that have rocked Sri Lanka. 6 blasts in total. The blasts in Sri Lankan churches happened during Easter mass explosion. Were reported at the St. Anthony's Kochikode Church in Colombo. Another explosion at the Negambo Church, and a 3rd explosion near Wion Church in Batikalau. There have also been 3 hotels that were targeted. An explosion rocked the Shangri-La Hotel in Colombo. Again, another explosion targeting Cinnamon Grand Hotel in Colombo and Kingsbury Hotel also in Colombo. Meanwhile, the Lankan Prime Minister has called for an emergency meeting to assess the situation. The emergency crews have been pressed into action. The government has requested the people to stay indoors and stay calm. Meanwhile, the Lankan government has declared a holiday for all schools as a precautionary measure for the next 2 days. In a first official reaction from the Sri Lankan government to the deadly blast, the Sri Lankan Finance Minister Mangala Samaraswivira tweeted condemning the heinous attacks. He called it a well-coordinated attempt to create murder, mayhem and anarchy, and said that all those who cherish democracy, freedom and economic prosperity must unite now with nerves of steel to defeat this heinous attempt. Sri Lankan President Maithripala Sirisena also condemned the attack and urged citizens to not believe these rumours. He said, and I quote, "I'm shocked and saddened by the situation that has occurred. Investigations have been launched to look into what conspiracy is behind these heinous acts. Please remain calm and do not be fooled by rumours at this critical moment in the country's history. There are many rumours and fake news stories circulating. Please take care not to be fooled by fake news, rumours. Trust only verified news providers." Meanwhile, India's External Affairs Minister has also tweeted. Sushma Swaraj has said that she's in constant touch with Indian High Commissioner in Colombo and she's keeping a close watch on the situation in the Indian Embassy in Colombo and has issued helpline numbers for Indians in need of assistance and any clarification. If Indians in distress may call the following numbers: +94 777 903082. Another helpline number is +94 11 24 22 788, +94 11 24 22 789, +94 777 902082, and another number is +94 77 22 34 176. Meanwhile, nations and world leaders have condemned the ghastly attack in Sri Lanka. Messages have already started pouring in from different quarters. Foreign Minister of Maldives has tweeted his condolences and prayers for the people and families affected by these attacks in Sri Lanka. Now, Pakistan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs has also issued a statement, and I quote, "Pakistan condemns explosions and terrorist attacks in Sri Lanka at churches and hotels that have led to numerous casualties and immense loss. People and government of Pakistan stand by people and government of Sri Lanka at this moment of tragedy and against terror." Okay, for all the latest on the news story, let me go across to Ashwin Hemantagama, our correspondent who's joining us live from Colombo. Ashwin, what is the latest that you're picking on? The last we spoke to you, the death toll had risen to 100 with 160 reported to be injured. What is the latest from Ground Zero?
And 3 star-class hotels, the death toll has increased to 160, unfortunately. And according to reports, over 300 people are still in hospitals in 3 locations, that is in the National Hospital, the Southern Colombo Hospital, and the Batticaloa Hospital. And security is increased, and government has requested people to be calm, and authorities has already requested public to stay indoors. Meanwhile, the government has taken a decision to close the schools, and the schools were supposed to be open tomorrow after long holidays for the National New Year. And schools will not commence tomorrow and day after. It will be national holidays for them as well. This is the current situation at Ground Zero, and the investigations are currently on.
Right. Ashwin, what's the security situation around the city, and what sort of law enforcement regulations have been imposed since today is Easter?
Well, at the moment, part of the 2 star-class hotels, the front portions are ripped off, and the roads right in front of those 2 hotels, the Cinnamon Grand and the Shangri-La, are closed. That is the Golf Face Drive. So areas are cordoned off, and already the injured are being removed, and security is beefed. So nobody is allowed to go in, and well, investigations are on. And, well, people are watching forward to see who's to be blamed for this unfortunate incident.
Right. Ashwin, please stay with us for now. Let me also go across to Rajiva Vijayasena. He's the former education minister from Colombo. Let's go and get some more inputs on this. Rajiva, targeting people in worship, this is a deeply abominable act. What is your take on these explosions that have rocked Sri Lanka today, that too on the day of Easter?
Quite horrifying, and in a sense it's qualitatively worse than anything we've had before. Sri Lanka suffered appallingly, as you're well aware, for about 25 years because of Tamil Tiger terrorism, and it was such a relief when we managed to overcome that. And for 10 years, people have felt absolutely safe. And the reactions I had today, I was out of Colombo and I was driving in, the calls show that, people are just very, very worried. And while on the one hand, the president is right to say, please don't panic. On the other, we have to remember that people will panic because they also have the memories of, ages ago. I remember our central bank was bombed by the Tigers. My sister worked there and came home drenched in blood, but she came home. Many of her colleagues didn't. So this worry is still with us. Who is behind this? I don't think we are in a position to guess at the moment. But what is also very worrying is that our intelligence agencies that did a great job towards the end have really been decimated and demoralized by attacks on them by countries that really resented our victory over terrorism. The West has a diaspora that has been pummeling them to attack us. And unfortunately, the present government has rather dismantled and demoralized the security forces. There were vicious attacks on the intelligence agencies. And, while obviously in all such cases, intelligence agencies sometimes work outside the law, we never had incidents as appalling as, what we've seen by the West in their, secret renditions and things like that. So we are very vulnerable and people are just desperately worried. I personally think that the attacks on the Christian churches are, obviously the people doing this don't care a damn about Christians, but I think they're also part of a general disruption because going together with the hotels at the same time, it shows some deep plot. And I'm afraid it does suggest a certain, international dimension, but where that comes from, I have no idea.
All right, Rajiv, that's a very interesting point that you're making, that there might be an international dimension that you're pointing to, because, just the mere depth of this entire operation goes on to say, we are looking at 6 explosions that rocked the Easter Mass in the churches, and then there are these high-end hotels that have also been targeted. Do you think that an attack of this scale would have, there was no intel input with regards to this to the government?
Well, I mean, if there was, it's obviously culpable that nothing has happened, but I think the intelligence services have indeed been decimated. And I mean, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see whether the government says, no, we heard something. But obviously, they seem to have ignored it. And, the range of the attacks, as you said, 3 top hotels in Colombo, a very, very important church in Colombo, and then Negombo and Batticaloa. And that's intriguing because that's, right away on the East Coast, has also been the site of, potential conflict. But as I said, I don't imagine that this has been entirely homegrown. I don't know whether you remember the Salman Rushdie story in which he talked about, I think it was Salman Rushdie, Sikh terrorism, and then mentioned the far more sophisticated terrorism that led to the killing of Rajiv Gandhi, where he talked about, tigers having reached sophistication. But I don't think this is former tigers. Some of them may be involved in terms of destabilizing the Sri Lankan government, but I don't think there's a racist element here.
So we could be looking at attempts to destabilize the Sri Lankan government at the moment. I was also, Rajiva, looking at some data.
The present government needs any attempt to destabilize it. It's been in a total mess already. And I can only hope that this desperate sacrifice makes the president realize that he had better, pull up his socks and start acting. But, the last week, what have we had? We've had the governing party, the UNP, squabbling about who should be its presidential candidate, insulting each other. We've had the president trotting off to a temple in India to pray for heavenly guidance. I mean, what sort of people are we, in whose hands the country is? No wonder there's such a lack of confidence and so much worry amongst so many people.
So, Rajiva, do you think that the recent political crisis in Sri Lanka has taken away attention from the underlying threat of terrorism that has finally ensued today?
No, I mean, I think the two separate issues. One is I think we have to wait to see what the motivation is here and who's involved. But I also think that, the Sri Lankan present government has managed to make the country so dysfunctional that all sorts of, movements will emerge. I do remember that when I took over as head of the Peace Secretariat and then subsequently Secretary of the Ministry of Disaster Management, there were attacks on various churches. And a friend of mine who was legal advisor to President Kumaratunga said a lot of this started in her time. But it stopped. I mean, the police actually dealt with it, but there were politicians who encouraged it.
Mr. Vijayasena, I'm just going to request you to hang in there with us for now. I'm also joined in by Nirmal Pereira, former Deputy Minister of External Affairs. Mr. Pereira, your take on what has finally taken place in Sri Lanka is, of course, deeply abominable. As people in worship were targeted. How have the Christian community been targets of multicultural instances of persecution? It's important for you to talk about that because that's of course been plaguing Sri Lanka for long.
Yeah, it's a Sunday attack. It's a message to the international community, to the whole world, not only to Sri Lanka. This is my perspective. And also the church in Kochikade, where predominantly, say approximately around 90% of the people who attend at that mass are Tamil people. So this is a message to the international, all the countries. I think it's similar to attacks in Bombay, where the religious institution was also attacked, as well as Taj Hotel, to prevent tourists coming there. It's something similar to that attack. Also, there is some in the social media letter circulating that originated from the defense quarters. It talks dated 11th April to all the organizations looking after defense, Ministry, MSD, TSD, and so on and so forth. Information of an alleged planned attack by a certain organization. They have mentioned the Muslim organization in this, named the name person, as well as I don't know the authenticity of this, but it's circulating and with several seals which have been received by various quarters of the defense organizations. So probably, if it is true, government knew about it, and unfortunately, there was not enough security provided to the churches, where people gather for prayer and for meetings and so on and so forth. Basically, many people have lost lives. I sympathize with them. My sympathies with their families. But this is something for sure it was pre-planned. Otherwise, it won't go simultaneously in all these churches and hotels.
Mr. Pereira, going by your information, are you trying to suggest that there was enough input to the government given with regards to today's explosions?
Letter circulating in the social media, government has so far not denied, not accepted that they have informed about this attack, not a particular place, about the attack on VIPs and public places where people gather.
All right, Mr. Nirmal Pereira joining us there. Thank you so much, Mr. Pereira, for your inputs. Let me go back to Mr. Rajiv Vijayasena, former Education Minister from Colombo, who joins us live right now. Thank you so much, Rajiv, for sparing us your precious time. So I would also like you to analyze the modus operandi of these attacks, because here we are looking at a very prominent church, that is the St. Anthony's Church, and not to forget 3 high-end hotels also that have been targeted. What do you make of this closely coordinated attack?
Well, as I said, it clearly shows immensely capable organization. And that's what makes me feel there must be some sort of international input. But of course, given that Sri Lanka has been so relaxed for the last 10 years, given that Easter Sunday churches are not going to engage in security checks and so on,
right? The
hotels are obviously welcoming as many guests as possible. So there wouldn't have been any security checks, I would imagine. And it would be perfectly possible for anyone to have, studied what there was in these places, the hotels I mean, to just go in with whatever and I would suspect leave it and go. But again, we'll have to wait to find out exactly how the explosions occurred.
Absolutely. We will have to wait for more information on the nature of these explosions, since this is an unfolding story. I'm also joined in by our correspondent Ashwin, who's bringing us all the latest. Ashwin, we've been looking at those ghastly images of these explosion sites. Now, what is the extent of damage caused to the churches and hotels? As we see in the images, one of the roofs of the churches has been completely blown off.
Yes, absolutely right, because now what we saw here, the front portions of the 2 5-star hotels, part of it is blown off and the damages are serious. So we are looking at major renovations to Shangri-La as well as Cinnamon Grand Hotel at the moment. And we are yet to receive ground pictures from the other 2 churches which is attacked in the Colombo and the suburb, and because the areas are cordoned off.
Right. Let me also go back to Rajiv Vijayasena. Rajiv, there has been an ominous rise in the attacks targeting Christians, especially since the end of the 17-year conflict, of the civil war. There have been targeted attacks on the minorities, especially the Muslims and the Christians. Why is Sri Lanka witness to this?
Well, I wouldn't say that there have been target attacks on Christians to any great extent, nothing compared with what we had in 2005, 7 and 8. But there was an attack in Anuradhapura last week on Palm Sunday.
Right.
And government really should have reacted more firmly to that. The attacks on Muslims were, as you know, happened in the time of the last government and then recurred again last year. And they were pretty horrifying. One of our problems is this relentless othering that our political system, our educational system encourages. And I'm afraid a few politicians are able to rise above it. You have some of that in India as well, of course. But I think, to me, the interesting thing is that the attack in Anuradhapura last week didn't involve loss of life. It was more sort of bullying attack. And this has been, I think, almost taking advantage of that and attacking the churches as well to confuse the issue. And this one was murderous. And it reminds me of what happened in 1983 when, if you remember, the then government, power-led government, attacked a lot of Tamil businesses, monstrous treatment. Manu Krishnan was part of that and said, no, this was nothing like as bad as what happened under nationalization. But there were efforts not to have loss of life. And then 2 days later, in a spate of sort of copycat attacks, some of them by the same thugs who now refuse to be restrained, people were killed in droves in what was called Black Friday, July 29, 1983. And, people forget all that. One of our problems in Sri Lanka is we never analyze and assess the past. And this seems to me similar, that here's a very sophisticated group taking advantage of the attack on the church last week and launching a massive attack, which is intended to send a very frightening message. And unless this government, really, as I said, reacts firmly, I think this country will lurch to even greater disaster than we've had for political and economic reasons in the last 3 years.
Right, Rajiva, let me also go back to Ashwin, who's joining us. Ashwin, what is the latest that you're picking on, especially right now? What the latest reports that are surfacing with regards to the death toll of foreigners? We are learning that at least 9 foreigners have lost their lives during these bomb blasts. What is it that you can update us with on this bit? All right, we are trying to reconnect with Ashwin, but this is the latest that we are picking, that at least 9 foreigners have been reported to be dead in Sri Lanka. Speaking from the Indian perspective, just a while ago, we heard from India's Foreign Minister Sushma Swaraj, who tweeted saying that she's been closely monitoring the situation in Sri Lanka with regards to Indians. There are also helpline numbers that have been flagged off for Indians to reach out to the Indian High Commission in Sri Lanka. And Ashwin joins us again. Ashwin, we were just talking about these latest reports that have surfaced about 9 foreigners who have been declared to be dead during these explosions. What is the latest that you're picking?
Well, actually, according to sources, 9 foreigners have already died, and the death toll has unfortunately increased to 160, and over 300 people are admitted to the National Hospital in Colombo, the Southern Teaching Hospital in Colombo, Kalubowila, and the Batikalo Hospital. So the security measures have increased, and the people are cautioned to keep calm, and authorities are currently investigating the matter.
All right, Ashwin, we're also learning through other sources that the Sri Lanka police chief had already warned of suicide blasts 10 days ago. How much substance lies to these reports?
Well, actually, there was a report that that gets changed hand in hand through the Viber and WhatsApp and other social media tools. But apparently, the government has not accepted or denied it, and everybody wants people to disregard unless the official channels comes out with such information. Even I received it, and I really don't believe that's true, because unless the government comes out with the authenticity and all sorts of information related to that.
All right, I'm also joined in by Zulfiq Farzan, journalist joining us live from Colombo at the moment. Zulfiq, we're also learning that the Sri Lanka police chief had warned of the suicide blasts 10 days ago. How substantial are these reports? Your take on that?
Well, there appears to be a certain document that has been changing hands, but we cannot verify the authenticity of that document or this message that is going around. So we are completely relying on the official statements that come out from the government and the president himself. The president, speaking to us earlier, said that he condemns the attack and requests the general public to remain calm and also to support the investigations that are going on. We also had another government minister speaking to us exclusively, that's Minister Sajith Premadasa, who said a special National Security Council meeting had already begun following these multiple explosions, and a special Cabinet of Ministers meeting shared by the Prime Minister also will take place shortly this afternoon following these attacks that had taken place.